the work that I've made for it, it's quite a mixed bag, and just trying to go and get a bit of a conversation happening in my own practice with the various subject matters and the type of abstract painting that I'm interested in looking at. When you do look at the work, you see that there are some paintings that seem to be more definite expressions of one type of painting, and then another would be sort of, I guess, seen as contrary to that, and often they're separated, often they're combined. It's always just quite challenging walking up to a canvas and not really having any premeditated idea of what's going to come of it, because generally I don't plan my pictures at all. And that sort of improvisational way of working is something that I've been doing for a few years now. The thing is with my approach to modernism is that it's definitely, in the piece that you wrote, you definitely got it right with identifying a certain kind of postmodern flavour to the way that I adopt various types of abstract painting, and that's correct. But for me, the lens through which I look at a lot of modernism is through design and pop culture. And I have more than a passing interest in science fiction and things like that, and I think that has that definitely skews the way that I perceive and interpret the parts of modernism that I'm interested in looking at and investigating. For me, that particular subject matter and the subject matter of painting are very much sort of interlinked, because design's influence on fine art, up until recently, is quite substantial, and I think design is definitely not, for me anyway, this is not a dirty word. I like good design. Like it's, and especially industrial design. It really meshes good ideas, good thinking with material, and I don't know. I enjoy the practicality of it. That sort of philosophy, I think, comes through in my work. Like, and what I was saying before about looking at art history with a particular bent, with a particular flavour, and the way I look at it is necessary to go and provide context for it. Yeah, art certainly doesn't exist in a vacuum, and it's very much part of life. And to some degree, it has to reflect that or be a part of it. I guess I've always had a sympathy with painting, or for it. It seems like a very, I don't know, it's something that I like, and I guess it's quite a romantic attachment that I have to it. But I needed to justify getting back into painting with some sort of real reason. It had to go and service the ideas. And at this time I was working in a bottle shop, and I was doing that for quite a long time, and a lot of the signs that would come through, the cork-flute signs that they used to advertise, they were quite interesting. And so I started using paint as a kind of reductive way of eliminating, both additive and reductive at the same time, way of eliminating the parts of the design within the sign that I didn't like, and basically just edited them with colours that I thought were appropriate, like to get this industrial signage and some element of abstract painting to fuse. and I didn't get too creative with it. I just let the existing structure within the sign to dictate as to how I painted it. Yeah, the method is that I use now is the same method I've been working on for the last 5 or 6 years, and that's and the physical manipulation, the way I paint the work, definitely reflects the way that I think through the work. So the ideas and the material are used sort of in parallel with one another. They match. So my method, my physical method, also matches sort of the methodology in my mind. And I think that's necessary. So I start off with generally a thin layer of paint to start off with. Get a series of marks happening on the surface, and let that inform what marks follow from that. So in that process of layering paint and layering ideas as you go along, you end up with like a push and pull between competing ideas. So you might end up with a shattered picture plane, or something that's particularly flat, something that looks three-dimensional, something that looks fairly gothic, something that looks quite poppy, something sad, something happy. You end up with all of these competing sort of polarities within the artwork, and it ends up being quite an interesting little conversation that you have with yourself, and also the object, which seems to have definitely a life of its own after a point. Well, with the improvisational method that I'm using at the moment, very often a picture will get to a point where it's dead or horrendous, but then all of a sudden a couple of things change and it seems to have life again, and it's quite interesting, quite an odd trick to play on yourself. The more I'd done just a bit of travel, about 3 months worth of travel before this is going back a few years ago now, going to a few big cities around the planet, and you spend a lot of time looking up, quite literally, walking through New York and places like that, and even London's a bit like that too. There's plenty to sort of get you looking upwards. I don't know, that particular perspective is something that I think came through in those more kind of structured geometric works. The kind of the brushy gestural beginning to the works, which they kept a lot of that in those paintings. I'm not doing that so much anymore. Definitely there was a definite picture plane, so there's definitely a background and a foreground, and so that sense of looking up or looking through things really came through in those particular works. And so, as I said, I think that came from me spending a lot of time looking up whilst I was overseas. But it's definitely related to my interest in science fiction as well. Trying to get a sense of space, the kind of design that you associate with science fiction films and literature. Trying to get a sense of that and fuse that with those things that I know about and interested in art history. Having those definite picture planes within the work it turns them into pictures of things as opposed to being objects. And yeah, that sort of flattening out and elimination of the picture plane. Something I'm interested in exploring more. Doesn't mean that you can't have layers in a picture or in transparency, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just stuck with opaque pop colours, or don't even have to be poppy colours, but there just has to be a reduction of the field, the visual field. So instead of space being, maybe that deep, space can only really, if the painting is going to go and maintain sort of its objecthood, it has to be very small, the depth of field. Well, the painting, The Future of Discipline, it's one of the larger landscape ones that I did for Power is Born Here. I guess it's one of the last works that I did for the show. And whilst I was painting The Future of Discipline, Power is Born Here, and I think also Timey Wimey Wibbly Wobbly, and the three of them all have quite, a distinct and different tones. Having two paintings that were quite, that were overtly authoritarian in their demeanour, their tone, and then having a painting that was a counterpoint to that was quite silly. So the works, those three works, perhaps it's a little bit of that sort of relationship between those three paintings is how I've approached the entire show, trying to go and get individual pieces being, performing particular, roles, almost like in a play. They're particular characters, they have certain characteristics. The Future of Discipline and Power is Born Here are both kind of strong, powerful expressions of authority, and then you've got a silly painting over in the corner, and counterpoint. Hopefully it's not. I think within the body of work, it's not too sort of reactive. I mean, it is me just reacting to particular ideas, so it's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's quite, they're quite considered. So yeah, that's what The Future of Discipline. That's its position in the show. It is a painting that is about authority. Yeah, that informs how I make the pictures. And I mean, I guess I think about painting shows in the same way I think about, say, putting together a show of sculptural work or installation work. That's why you don't show individual pieces. There's a particular story that you're trying to tell by making multiple pieces. I mean, you're not going to get all of the story by just looking at one painting. There are complete stories within the painting. Well, it's a funny term to use considering they're not really narrative driven. I guess each picture is autonomous, and they do work separately from the rest, but then they also tell a greater story when they're placed together. Well, the work that we've been discussing, that's going to be shown down in Sydney, opens up on the 23rd of Jan 2014 at the Hughes Gallery, and the name of the show is Power is Born Here. And yeah, you can have a read about the title on the Hughes Gallery website. Try not to take it too seriously, it's tongue-in-cheek. Yeah. A sense of humour about your work, I think, is definitely necessary to keep it honest. And I think humour as a critical tool is, highly undervalued in art. So hopefully I've some of that humour comes across, at least in some of the works. It doesn't have to be there all the time, but painting has a really, really interesting, deep history. You know, it's about ideas and having sympathy with ideas and trying to go and express them in a particular way and tap into particular histories. Painting is still vital and still has something to say about art and life and living and what it is to be human.